From the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah said, "The word of the Lord came to me. Hanamel, son of your uncle Shallum, is going to come to you and say, 'Buy my field that is at Anatot, for the right of redemption by purchase is yours.' Then my cousin Hanamel came to me in the court of the guard, in accordance with the word of the Lord, and said to me, 'Buy my field that is at Anatot in the land of Benjamin, for the right of possession and redemption is yours. Buy it for yourself.' And then I knew this was the word of the Lord. And I bought the field at Anatot from my cousin Hanamel, and I weighed out the money to him, 17 shekels of silver. I signed the deed, sealed it, got witnesses, and weighed the money on the scales. Then I took the sealed deed of purchase containing the terms and conditions and the open copy, and I gave the deed of purchase to Baruch, son of Neriah, in the presence of my cousin Hanamel, in the presence of witnesses who signed the deed of purchase, and in the presence of all the Judeans who were sitting in the court of the guard. In their presence I charged Baruch, saying, 'Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, take these deeds, both this sealed deed and of purchase and this open deed, and put them in an earthenware jar, in order that they may last for a long time. For thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, houses and fields and vineyards shall again be bought in this land.' May these words be to us our light and life." On September 11th, 2001, I was living in California. That morning, while most of us were glued to our televisions, unable to tear ourselves away, Marjorie Suhaki chose to do something different. Marjorie is a renowned process theologian. She is also my teacher and my friend. And on that terrible morning, Marjorie drove to her local nursery and bought 2 large flats of flowers, petunias, snapdragons, salvia. She spent the rest of the day planting them and tending to her garden. As she explained to me later, there was enough of ugliness and suffering in the world that day. What the world needed, what God needed, God who feels everything that happens in this world needed, was beauty. And so she planted flowers. I think of that story often as the suffering caused by climate change increases, as rivers disappear, as the earth gets hotter and famine multiplies, as more species slide into extinction, as sea levels rise, as forests burn, and profiteers gleefully anticipate the gutting of legislative protections. Climate change is rapidly becoming a crisis that defies hyperbole. I read that online and it struck with me. Climate change is rapidly becoming a crisis that defies hyperbole. Hyperbole, wildly exaggerated language used to make a point. And it can't keep up with the pace and scale of our changing climate and the chaos that it is wreaking on every living thing, right down to the level of our genomes. Many of us are familiar with the analogy of the frog and the pot of water. If you put a frog into a pot of boiling water, it will jump out. But if the water is cold at the outset, then the oblivious frog will stay there while the water slowly heats, and by the time it is aware of the danger, if at all, it's too late to act. And boiled frog is on the menu. The canary in the mine operates on a somewhat similar principle. Carbon monoxide gas is deadly and undetectable. By the time miners become aware of it, it's too late to act. But canaries are especially sensitive to this gas, so as long as the bird keeps singing, miners know that they are safe. Their air supply is safe. A canary that suddenly stops singing has succumbed to the gas, making the bird an effective early warning system for the miners. Both stories come to mind in the context of this profoundly anti-science, bomb-loving administration. Climate deniers are like the frog, refusing to believe that the water in the pot is getting hotter. Most climate scientists would say, we're the miners, and the canary has stopped singing. If the frog narrative prevails, then it's game over. If the canary narrative prevails, then that little bird has bought us some time. Because make no mistake, if we're the miners, we are not just going about our business to the chirpy soundtrack of birdsong. The canary has stopped singing. And we are in that space between stark realization and action. That moment when we ask, how much time do we have? What's the best way out of here? What now? I'm neither a scientist nor a politician, so my currency is neither evidence nor power. I'm a theologian, so my currency comes down to one thing: hope. Hope is what I bring to the table. Hope is the long game. It's the one that accepts that there will be losses, and my own life may be counted among them, but there will be a way out of this mine shaft, and enough of us will make it for there to be a future. You know the expression, hanging by a thread? Hope is the slender thread that bravely holds together that worn-through cloth. It is the finger in the dike. It is the thing that enables us to think beyond ourselves, to accept that I may not survive, but by my actions someone will. Beyond war, there will be peace. Beyond this ecological disaster, there will come a time when people will again be able to plant a field and harvest goodness from it. Without hope, we may as well jump in the pot and wait for the water to boil, or keel over like the canary. But with hope, we just might do something crazy, like plant flowers on a 9/11 as Marjorie did, or buy a field on the cusp of captivity the way Jeremiah did. In the midst of falling towers, Marjorie planted her garden, and in the midst of chaos and destruction and exile, Jeremiah bought a field. Jeremiah is one of the great prophets of ancient Israel. When the call came to him from God, it was with a set of 3 specific instructions. Go where I send you. Stand up and speak. Do not be afraid. Jeremiah was active in Israel during the chaotic time after the northern kingdom had fallen to Assyria, and leading up to the time when the southern kingdom would be crushed by Babylon and its people taken into captivity. For this brief interregnum between empires, conquering empires, the king's prophets promised peace and prosperity. Jeremiah prophesies doom. His unpopular message results in persecution. He is beaten and put into stocks, even thrown into a well and left for dead. Because of his dire warnings, he is even mocked with the nickname, Terror All Around, Terror All Around. Jeremiah's prophecies are expressed directly through speech, but also indirectly through symbolic acts. In today's reading, Jeremiah buys a field. But if his message is doom and destruction, terror all around, why does he buy a field? And why does he do it so publicly with so much detail? The very act counters everything he's been saying for years, which should alert us to the fact that this is no ordinary action. Jeremiah's purchase of the land is a prophetic act intended to convey hope, even when all else seems hopeless. Bad things will happen. The destruction of Jerusalem and the exile to Babylon will come, but the story will not end there. Jeremiah's purchase signifies God's assurance that a time will come when the people return to the land, that they will again plant and harvest their own fields, as in fact they do 70 years later when they return. Hope is the currency of theology. And on this second Sunday of Easter, after last week's joy-filled service, we really don't need to be reminded of that. Hope, by its very nature, admits that there is something bigger than us. If it's all up to me or to you, I think we're done for. That frog is cooked. But if there is something that transcends you and me, a something that by its very nature is love and transformation, then a new and a different story is possible. Jeremiah bought a field. Marjorie planted flowers. Each one acted in the midst of terror and destruction, and each one chose a symbolic act that leaned on hope. What can we do? What can we do? We can organize and advocate for the earth, but at the end of the day, what sustains us in our work? Where is the hope that keeps us keeping on? What symbolic action can we take to remind us that we are part of a larger narrative, one not written by human beings, but continually unfolding in God? Here's a clue. This is not Climate Change Sunday. This is Earth Sunday, Creation Sunday. So on this day, I urge you to find something within creation itself, specifically within the beauty of creation. I have a friend who advocates for what she calls beauty breaks to help us with our terrors and bouts of despair. A beauty break is an intentional interruption of our work to take in the wonder of creation. A beauty break is a pause in our day to admire a sunset, to appreciate a flower, to catch a bird in flight and listen to its song. My backyard is a steep hillside on the banks of the Mississippi, overrun with buckthorn and other weeds, and I'm trying to reclaim it. My neighbor encourages me with her mantra, work a little, enjoy. Work a little, enjoy. Yesterday, working on the hillside, John came to me more than once and said, "Time for a beauty break." Both my neighbor and my friend understand the restorative powers of nature. Both remind me of Rachel Carson, who wrote, "Those who dwell among the beauties and mysteries of the earth are never alone or weary of life." So take a beauty break. Spend some time outdoors. Go to a park, the Como Conservatory, the Minnesota Arboretum. Find a clump of trees and commune with them. They talk to each other. Did you know? Well, they do. Plant flowers. If you can't garden, buy a packet of seeds for someone and give them to that person who will plant them for you and invite you over to see them growing. Buy flowers and put them in a vase. We've changed our light bulbs. We're recycling, although Michael will happily tell us how much more we can and should be doing. Thank you. We're taking shorter showers, and we've stopped using Roundup. But the problem is systemic. No matter how important our individual efforts are, and believe me, they are very, incredibly important, the crisis is such that collective, cooperative effort is the only way we will survive. And collective, cooperative effort has a name, and that name is government. Which means it's time to move on from light bulbs to collective action. But wouldn't you know, a collective is comprised of a multitude of individuals, so we're right back to personal commitment and choice, adding our voices and our bodies to bring pressure on elected officials and corporate officers in the service of Earth. For as yesterday's March for Science reminds us, there is no planet B. So in a nutshell, work a little, enjoy. Take a beauty break. But also this, go where God sends you, stand up and speak, and do not be afraid. We have an administration hell-bent on turning this planet into a Death Star. But we are told that when God created the heavens and the earth, God declared them to be good. Which side are you on?